All right, so we are starting the kind of the middle class here of the Song of Solomon class. So we'll go ahead and open up your Bibles to Song of Solomon. We'll be predominantly in chapter 4 tonight. We'll kind of end with just a verse of chapter 5, but chapter 4 down through chapter 5, verse 1, and we will go from there. I'm going to try to get through most of tonight's stuff, and then we'll have some discussion at the end, just because I want to kind of fly through some of the stuff. And, again, I've danced around how much detail to go into, because like Richard said, this can get sycamore. And that's, I have to be a little bit careful here. But hopefully we'll be able to enjoy the study together. So let's go ahead and start jumping through. We're going to be dealing with chapter 4, all of chapter 4, and the first verse of chapter 5, which is really the story and the love song version of this book. It is the consummation. This is the wedding night. This is the part, women plan the wedding day, men plan the wedding night, right? That tends to be the way this, that's how this tends to work out. So that's what we're going to be dealing with tonight. I will say, just as a disclaimer, this class, we will be talking about some more explicit concepts. I hope to do that in a tactful way. One of the reasons I hope to do that in a tactful way is because I think the Bible speaks of it euphemistically on purpose. What I mean by that is, instead of coming right out and saying something, it is intentionally guarded about the way it says it. And not because it is a shameful thing, not at all in this book, but because it retains the mystery and the honor of the thing that it's talking about. So it's not euphemistic in the sense of, that's not something we should say. It's being euphemistic or using alternative ideas and thoughts and descriptions for the sake of not being so crass and open about it that it loses its beauty, it loses its mystery. And so that's one reason I'm going to try to be very cautious about the way that I talk about it. Again, not because it's a shameful thing, but because I want to retain the way the Bible speaks about it. But I will say, some of it I will be blunt enough that it might not be an appropriate lesson for children, depending on the standards that you set for your children and what you want them to hear and not hear. So I just say that up front. I will say that I am unsure of ancient sexual practices. I would imagine they are very similar to modern practices. There are probably some differences, but there are probably a lot more similarities than we think there are, because there's nothing new under the sun, right? And that comes from a very similar time period, that same idea of nothing new under the sun. And so I imagine much of what we'll talk about tonight is, again, you can relate it very easily to our modern ways that we do things. So again, I always try to be cautious not to project our modern culture into the ancient culture. But when you're dealing with something as timeless as relationships and as timeless as the intimacy that is involved in a marriage relationship, I imagine there's a lot of similarities and not necessarily anything that it's going to blow anybody's mind in this class. So that I say that just to be, make sure you understand where I'm coming from in this. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go through the text, and I want to more or less interpret what's being said in the text in this section, because I think there are some lessons that can be gleaned from the text if you understand the specifics of what's going on. As far as what we've talked about so far in this book, most of the talking has been done by the woman. I don't know if you've noticed that, but Back in chapter 1, she does the predominant amount of talking from verse 2 all the way down through verse 7. You have the man that speaks for a short period just to more or less say, you don't call yourself ugly, you're beautiful, you are a prize. And then she speaks again. You have him, speak in verse 15, speak in verse 2 of chapter 2. But mostly it's the woman speaking. Even in chapter 2, depending on how you interpret some of that, I know my Christian Standard Bible has from halfway through verse 10 down through verse 14 as the man, but I'm not sure all of that is the man speaking. And so chapter 3, again, you have the woman speaking mostly. The end of chapter 3, you have some observers that are talking about the wedding itself, that are describing the man coming. But as a whole, most of the writing so far, most of the words so far have been the woman speaking. And it's been the woman talking about the way she is looking forward to marriage, how she's looking forward to coming under his protection and his provision, that he makes her feel safe. And he's made a couple of comments about how beautiful she is. And that's essentially where we're at so far in this book. It's interesting to me that in chapter 4, it's like the man takes over. And so for most of chapter 4, you're going to have the man speaking. And we see that because of the way that he describes the woman, the way that you have, just in verse 12, my sister, my bride. You've got a lot of statements that make it very clear that the man is speaking. And so one of the lessons that I teach this in pre-marriage counseling, and this is essentially a good picture of the man taking the leadership role in the relationship, is what you have going on here. The man is up until this point, it's just been more of a love wishes, but now that the relationship has begun and is a full commitment in his marriage, the man has come in his parade and on his chair that he made. He's been brought to the wedding. He has taken the woman home, back to his home, and he has, in a sense, I won't say taken charge, but he has taken leadership. He has taken a leadership role in their relationship. And so that becomes something you see that we still show that in our modern marriages, in our modern marriage ceremonies. The way we do that oftentimes is, one of the things I'm always careful about is whenever I've been asked to preach a wedding, I never want to be the first person walking out. I know that sounds weird, and I'm probably make too much of some of the symbolism of a wedding ceremony. But the idea in our modern wedding ceremonies where the man, the groom, walks out first and stands there waiting for his bride to come is it signifies that he is initiating this ceremony. He is initiating this commitment, this covenant. There's lots of symbolisms that we have, him asking for her hand in marriage from her father. Again, that is very much a display that the man is taking a leadership role in initiating this relationship. You have the same thing here in this chapter, that the man is initiating this relationship. He is making it known that he is ready to lead. He is ready to move things forward. And so that's where you've got these kind of statements. So we're just going to kind of take this little bit section by section. How beautiful you are, my darling. How very beautiful. Behind your veil, your eyes are doves. Your hair is like a flock of goats streaming down Mount Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of newly shorn sheep coming up from washing, each one bearing twins, and none has lost its young. Your lips are like a scarlet cord, and your mouth is lovely. Behind your veil, your brow is like a slice of pomegranate. Now, these are not our go-to pickup lines these days. I've never yet described my wife's forehead like a piece of fruit. It's just not my what I do. But what you have here is him describing her and reassuring her and telling her how beautiful he finds her, which is important because she has been clear so far in the book that she does not think that she is beautiful. And so he starts almost describing her from head to toe. Is kind of what you have going on here. That, he starts with what he can see. She has the veil down over her face, but he can see her eyes, and she has big eyes, and they're innocent eyes. A lot of times that's what we think of when we think of a dove's eyes. The idea of her hair looking like a flock of goats is a reference to if you ever see goats coming down the mountainside, the way they all hop along, it's the idea of wavy hair. So apparently she has kind of a blondish, brownish, wavy hair. And so he's describing her long, flowing, wavy hair as a flock of goats streaming down a mountainside, which is a beautiful sight to see from what I've been told. Your teeth are like a flock of newly shorn sheep. So the idea is actually, that's an image of white teeth, which again, in their culture, they didn't have fluoride, they didn't have toothpaste, they didn't have toothbrushes. So the idea that she has beautiful teeth is quite a compliment to her. And not only beautiful teeth, did you notice this next part? She has all of her teeth. Woo! High standards here, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this lady has every single one of her teeth. But again, that probably points to the fact that she is a young woman, being that her teeth have not started falling out yet, which if you can imagine in our world, if we did not have the dental care and, all the things we do to keep our teeth healthy, your teeth start to fall out. And so just the fact that she has not only white teeth, but she has all of her teeth. I mean, he is giving her high compliments. He is noticing the big deal things here. Her lips are like a scarlet cord. Let me get her lips are like a scarlet cord, red and beautiful. Is basically the idea. Your mouth is lovely behind your veil. Your brow is like a slice of pomegranate, probably referring to, the redness of her skin. Maybe her blushing would be the idea there. He can tell that she's blushing with the way he is giving her great compliments and talking about how beautiful she is. She's reacting to his compliments. Your neck is like the Tower of David, constructed in layers. 1,000 shields are hung on it, all of them shields of warriors. Your breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle that feed among the lilies. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, I will make my way to the mountain of myrrh and the hill of frankincense. So again, you've got this idea of the neck being long and her neck being bared. That kind of a long, slender neck is the idea here. And then you've got the 1,000 shields are hung on it. That's probably referring, this is so much easier to do when I can see you all, because then I can get y'all to, let me see if I can actually expand this and see more of you. Oh, come on. I don't know if it'll let me or not. Oh, here we go. All right. So what do you think the shields on her neck is referring to? We'll get some feedback here instead of me just explaining everything. What do you think shields around the neck? All right, Donna?
Could it just be jewelry?
Jewelry. Okay. Yeah. So you can imagine if she's wearing, she's just gotten married. And so she's got, beautiful jewelry on her. And so it looks like if you were to line shields up on the side of a wall, like in an armory or something like that, you've got shields that are hung up in line. And so he's commenting on the fact that she's wearing beautiful jewelry, and that, these aren't insignificant. These are this jewelry is, I mean, it's very noticeable. It's 1,000 shields. So, again, obviously she probably doesn't have 1,000 pieces of little things on her jewelry, but the exaggeration here to show just how beautiful she really is. Okay, so neck is long and bare. Verse 5, your breasts are like two fawns. So her breasts are graceful and they're very pleasant to see. It has been interesting to me when you study ancient culture that it seems that the undressing would happen even though the veil would stay over the face. And so that kind of helps explain a little bit why Jacob could be fooled, does it not? If Jacob were, supposed to marry Rachel, but instead he ends up marrying Rachel's sister Leah, and Leah has a veil over her face. And so if they were similar in stature and they go into the tent, and it's probably not well lit in these tents back, probably in Song of Songs time, you've got houses that they were coming home to, but, in a dark tent. And you can imagine Jacob's eyes were not necessarily on her face. They were on other things. And that's what's going on here also. You've got, this man's eyes, he notices how beautiful her breasts are. He describes them as two fawns, twins of a gazelle that feed among the lilies. That's probably a reference to just the grace and the, just very pleasant. Probably all of us have had the experience of being out in the woods and seeing some deer in the distance, and they're sitting over, standing over there grazing in the grass, and you just stop and stare, right? Just because it's beautiful to see. It's not something you see all the time. And so same kind of idea. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, I will make my way to the mountain of myrrh and the hill of frankincense. What is that talking about? Any takers on that? Nobody wants to go for up. Keith?
Just a guess, but she would probably be the one that smelled like myrrh and frankincense, and he was making his way to her for the consummation. Okay.
Well, it's interesting. Several times in the book already, we've had myrrh and frankincense play a role. So if you look back in chapter 1, you've got the perfume or the smell of the man that is mentioned. But if you look down in, and I'm looking for the specific verse, chapter 1, verse 13. The one I love is a sachet of myrrh to me, spending the night between my breasts. More than likely, what I think going on here is that, here she's a woman, she has a veil on, but apparently she has unrobed, and he's already noticed her breast. But he's also noticing, he's saying, I'm going to come to the myrrh, and that's where I'm going to spend some time. In the hill of frankincense, okay? Probably some innuendo here, speaking of, again, her breast, but speaking of, her breast, according to earlier in the book, has a satchel of myrrh resting between them. And so that would be worn around the neck as a smell preventative, as a more or less potpourri that she would wear around her. And he's saying, I'm going to come enjoy the potpourri is the idea here. And so, again, he plans to come and enjoy that. And this is where he plans to camp out for a while, is basically the idea that you have here. Verse 7 and 8. You are absolutely beautiful, my darling. There is no imperfection in you. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. Descend the peak of Armana, from the summit of Senir and Hermon, to the dens of the lion, to the mountains of the leopards. So again, you've got this idea. Anybody want to take a stab at that? Now, verse 7 is easy. Anybody want to take a stab? What's he saying in verse 7?
Wow.
Yeah. Woo! I mean, that's the idea in our modern vernacular. Okay, so you know, he is thrilled with his choice and his blessing. Anybody want to take a stab at verse 8? No, okay, I got you. Essentially, let's go on an adventure together. Now you can pick this apart and actually look at, you know, the Lebanon was known for its hills, and you got the peak of Armana, summits of Senir and Hermon. I mean, all of these are references to overlooks, beautiful places, places where you go and observe beauty, places where you go and enjoy, you know, just the sights. And it's probably a way of saying, after saying you are so beautiful, it's like saying, hey, you are so beautiful, you know, you are the only thing I want to see. Let's go, you know, let's go on this adventure together, seeing the beautiful things that God has prepared for us. Some people try to dig into, you know, dens of lions and mountains of leopards and what particular body parts those could be referring to. I don't know that all of that is necessary, as much as the point he's trying to make is this is going to be a wonderful adventure. This is going to be a very enjoyable experience. And he, again, interestingly, he is reassuring her again. Now, up until this point, he's been reassuring her about her beauty. Now he's reassuring her that this is going to be a pleasurable experience. And you can understand, I mean, here you've got what I would assume to be a virgin woman. I would assume, you know, we don't know any of their backgrounds. They might be widows and widowers or things like that. There might be background that we don't know of. But just from the most simplistic viewpoint, you've got two virgins, a man and a woman, who are coming together to experience something they've never experienced before. And you can imagine she's going to be very nervous about that. And he is reassuring her not only that she is beautiful, but that this is going to be a fun and enjoyable experience. And I think that's important. I think there's some lessons there, again, particularly for men and probably for women too, but that the goal is not to get what you want out of this. In a good marriage, the goal is to give to the other person what they need. And you see that here with this man, even in a moment of what very clearly is a moment of passion, very clearly is a moment that he's been looking forward to, and he is still reassuring her and loving her and putting her first. He's not rushing into this. He's taking his time to observe and let her know that she is a beautiful woman, and he is putting her first in the way that he is handling this. Verse 9, 10, and 11. You have captured my heart, my sister, my bride. You have captured my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. How delightful your caresses are, my sister, my bride. How your caresses are much better than wine, and the fragrance of your perfume than any balsam. Your lips drip sweetness like the honeycomb, my bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. Okay, so again, picking it apart just verse by verse, what's verse 9 saying? Anybody? All right, Barry?
He's telling her, you're the only one for me.
Yeah, I mean, I am so caught up with you. I'm so focused on you. I'm so enamored by you. And I think it's interesting, couple of things here, even in this verse. You have captured my heart, my sister, my bride. What is it he calls her over and over and over again in this passage? My sister and my bride. And all of those are saying that we are close and that we are committed. He is reminding her that this is an appropriate thing that they are doing. What have they done so far in this book? Every time they have a desire, what is said back in chapter 2, verse 6, that, do not awaken love until the time is appropriate. And I think what he's reminding her here is the time is now appropriate. There's nothing that we can hold back from this anymore. That this is what is supposed to be happening. No, you've captured my heart with one glance of your eyes. Notice there that is not a statement of overwhelming lust, is it? I mean, this is a statement of, I was yours from the first time you looked at me. I was yours. I don't. It's not all of the nakedness and lewdness that gets me committed to you. It's one glance from your eyes. So again, he's bringing back the attention to the relationship more so than the actual sexual activity. And I think that's, again, a lesson to be learned there. One jewel of your necklace. It's not your richness that gets me excited. Remember earlier he said she had 1,000 shields on her neck, right? But is that what he's excited about? No, he's excited about their relationship. So again, that's important. She is intoxicating. She is exciting. Verse 10, he enjoys her and drinks in the smells of her. There's a lot of caressing. That at this point, you could probably go ahead and say that they've moved beyond looking at each other. Like they're actually having some physical connection now. But him holding her holding him, that is exciting. He's enjoying that, and he enjoys her smell, which is in and of itself an amazing thing considering the time period. He is really building her up and letting her know that he is completely committed to this relationship. And so he describes how sweet her kisses are, and how sweet her kisses taste and her sweet smell. And so again, they've started to engage in physical activity, and he is still, even in that, reassuring her and loving her and putting her first in the way that they're talking and looking at each other. My sister, my bride, there's that description again. You are a locked garden and a sealed spring. Your branches are paradise of pomegranates with choicest fruits, henna with nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all the trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, with all the best spices. You are a garden spring, a well of flowing water, streaming from Lebanon. Anybody want to take a gander at this? All right, Donna?
Well, the first part would it be alluding to the fact that she's a virgin?
I think so. I think, and not only is she a virgin, I would even go so far as to say that he is being respectful of her, and that he is letting, you'll see this when we get to the next section, he is letting her more or less unlock herself to him. Meaning he is not forcing himself. He is not in any way taking advantage, whether you can or cannot in a marriage situation. But he is putting all of he is allowing her to respond before he moves forward, which means he's being respectful. So I think there's that. But yes, I think, Donna, you're right in that it's also a reference to the fact that she's a virgin, that she is, no one has ever been in this garden before. And again, people make all sorts of specific one-to-one parallels. Garden means the private parts and things like that. And again, I don't know that all of that is necessary in order to just understand the respect and the assurance that he is giving her. And I think that in and of itself is pretty important. So he's saying he wants to have sex with her, but he is kind of leaving that up to her. He describes her garden as being pleasing and unblemished, meaning she's a virgin, and plentiful, meaning it is everything is ready, everything is appropriate, everything is ripe, using a garden term there. And so, awake, north wind, come, south wind, blow on my garden and spread the fragrance of its spices. Let my love come to his garden and eat its choicest fruits. So again, I think this is the wife responding to him and saying, he's saying your garden is locked up. I am been very clear that I'm excited and ready, and when you welcome me in, I'll be ready. And she basically says, come, blow in the garden, spread the fragrance of its spices, let my love come to his garden, which is why we can know it's her speaking, and eat its choicest fruit. There are some who have tried to say, because of the blowing concept, that this is a reference to other types of intercourse. Again, I don't know that that is necessary as much as it is just a beautiful picture of the fact that she is saying, throw open the gates. You say the garden is locked, I throw open the gates. You can come into my garden, you can eat the choicest fruit, you can come and enjoy what has been saved for you. And then chapter 5, verse 1, I have come to my garden, my sister, my bride. So now he's speaking again. I gather my myrrh with my spices. I eat my honeycomb with my honey. I drink my wine with my milk. We'll come back to that last phrase in just a moment. But, now this is him responding of, he has now come and enjoyed the garden. So this is the poetic way of saying they have now engaged in consummation. They have now enjoyed what they have been looking forward to. And so again, they have sex, and that's kind of the end of that little section. Chapter 5, verse 1, the second part, my version says narrator. What does your version identify the speaker as there? Anybody have something?
Others.
Others, okay. Who else? All right, Barry?
Mine says friends.
Friends, okay. Anybody else? Okay, so others, narrator, friend. So again, the key is we don't know. Because the text doesn't actually identify who's speaking when. What we have here is it's obviously not the man, and it's obviously not the woman. And so it's something else. I think, although I put chorus, I think that this is God. And the reason I say that is because, in keeping with the idea that this is a biblical picture of a God-approved relationship from courtship all the way through into marriage, we know God approves of marriage. God approves of a man and a woman being married if they can be married and enjoying the fruits of that marriage. So the idea of eat, friends, drink, be intoxicated with caresses, I tend to think that that is a statement made from God. Now, that's my own interpretation. You don't have to take that interpretation. It is a somewhat again, it's merely an interpretation. So, again, I tend to think that it's God speaking there because it goes along with the concept of why I think this text is in Scripture. And again, if it's not no harm done, if it is, what a beautiful picture. If it is, what a great picture it is of a woman and a man who have desired to be together, but they have kept things appropriate, and they have prepared themselves for marriage, and he has prepared a home for her to come and live with him, and they have appropriately been engaged, and they have been married, and they have come together, and he has very respectfully and reassuringly loved her, and she had welcomed him to that intimate relationship. And in the end, when all is said and done, God is standing there applauding. I just, maybe it's me reading too much into it, but I like the picture that God so openly applauds marriage and applauds a good relationship. And so again, that you don't have to take that particular interpretation if you don't want to. That's completely up to you. All right, so moving on, a couple of lessons real quick before we jump into some discussion. One is it's finally in the story time to experience the physical joy of intimacy, and it's appropriate and right at this moment. And that's important. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, maybe even last week, that I have seen so many young couples who have struggled in their early marriage because of what they have been taught about sex. That they've been taught that it is an ugly thing, it is an inappropriate thing, it is a wrong thing, and they've been taught that in an effort to try to dissuade them from engaging in sex before marriage. But instead, what it has done is it has given them an inappropriate view of a very wonderful and good thing that God created. And I think we need to be very cautious about that we're not sullying what God created as a wonderful and good thing. Instead, if the relationship is built correctly, what you have is, like in this book, two people who have very appropriately kept each other away from one another on a physical level until the time is appropriate, at which point he reminds her, "You are my sister, my bride, my bride, my bride, my bride, my bride." He reminds her again and again because he's letting her know now the time is here. Everything's ready. It's the right time for us. And so because of that, it's very enjoyable and exciting instead of it being an emotional roller coaster, which is what it is for a lot of young people. And so I hope, and this is one reason I think this book should be studied with young people and married people, people of all ages, because I think it's good to teach young people that what God created is a beautiful and wonderful thing, but it is only beautiful and wonderful if it is enjoyed the way God intended it to be enjoyed. I can relate that to a ham and cheese sandwich with mayonnaise on it. I don't know if you like mayonnaise or not, but a ham and cheese sandwich with a sandwich with mayonnaise on it is a wonderful thing, as long as it has been kept the way it should be kept and hasn't gone bad or sour, right? We have a bad habit in our house right now. I probably shouldn't admit this because I've said too many not nice things about my wife at this point. But I'm particularly bad about this. My wife is not so much. So we'll throw myself under the bus. Maple will get a sippy cup full of milk and will hide it on occasion for herself. And then she will come back to that cup of milk 2 days later without us having ever known that that cup of milk was there. that cup of milk was really wonderful in its appropriate time. That cup of milk is disgusting outside of its appropriate time. Everybody with me on this? Again, I don't see a problem with teaching that about intimacy, physical intimacy. We don't have to teach young people that it is wrong, wrong, wrong in order for them to understand that it is very, very right and wonderful and enjoyable and lovely and what God created to be a great part of the, strength building of a relationship in the marriage relationship. We just because milk can spoil does not mean that we refuse milk forever, even when it's appropriate. Does that make sense? Everybody with me on that? All right. So we can discuss that more in a minute if you want to. Also, the husband should be focused on his wife and not on himself. This is repeated over in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians chapter 7. We're all familiar with this. A husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise a wife to her husband. A wife does not have the right over her own body, but the husband does. In the same way, a husband does not have the right over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except when you agree for a time to devote yourself to prayer, then come together again. Otherwise, Satan may tempt you because of your lack of self-control. And so again, that concept of, my body belongs to my wife and my wife's body belongs to me. If we truly believe that, we will treat one another with respect because, that's how that relationship has to work. That's the only way that relationship works. And that's true even in the physical intimacy side of a marriage relationship. I think sometimes our culture has tried to convince us that sex is a man's thing and women care about other things. And that's really not true. Part of that also is our culture has taught women to be manipulative with intimacy. If he's not acting the way you want him to act, then just withhold from him. Well, that's not scriptural. It's also not scriptural for a man to expect to be treated with that kind of love and honor if he's not treating his wife with love and honor. And so again, the relationship that you have here is reciprocal. It is not selfish. And too often in our modern culture, marriages are taught to be selfish. I can say hands down, every marriage counseling I have ever done has had the exact same issue, which is he is looking at her to blame and she is looking at him to blame. And of course, they don't see anything wrong that they did themselves, which could be summed up in one word. They're both being selfish. And so again, that's the concept you have in scripture that's really talked about here. Notice this man, even on his wedding night, is not thinking only about what he can get. Okay, so when Tiffany and I got married in Florida, I always have to relate to a story. So when we got married in Florida, again, I told y'all she had 9 maids and I had 9 groomsmen. And I had to really search to find 9 friends that I thought would love me enough to come and be in my wedding. It was, I was about to, call the school janitor or something. I mean, it was, I just don't have that many friends apparently. And so I had some friends, we drove little junker cars. And so her mom let us borrow her Lexus to drive to Orlando for our honeymoon, which was about 2 hours away. And so they, of course, decorated the car. Now, we got married on a Saturday, which meant we had to show up at a church with things written, inappropriate things written on the car the next day, like, get you some. That was one of the statements written on the window of the car. Of course, we had we didn't even think about it, the fact that we had to drive up to a worship service the next morning with "Get You Some" written on the side of our car. But the reason I point that out is this: that's our modern picture of marriage. Go get what belongs to you. Is that this man's perspective? No. He's not out to get him some. He is out to give, 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 give. He is a generous and loving man to her. And every man should learn that lesson from this book. Even on the night when you should expect physical intimacy galore, the wedding night, he still focuses on her, making her feel lovely, making her feel loved, making her feel comfortable, reassuring her that this is the appropriate and good thing for them to be doing, being respectful enough to let her invite him in instead of forcing himself on her because it's what he feels is appropriate. I mean, do you see all the ways he gives deference and honor and love to her in this story? And that's one reason I love this picture here, even on what is probably the most sensual portion of the entire poem. And then you also learn in the story that there's really nothing held back. When they get to the wedding night portion, there's nothing that they really hold back from each other. They continue to just love each other. She invites them in. There's no indication that she, is hesitant by the time he has loved her and reassured her. And so you again see that. And then God honors, if you take my interpretation, which that's the big if, but if you take my interpretation here of chapter 5, verse 1b, God honors and invites people to the physical relationship in marriage. And so that becomes an important part too. If God speaks positively of that side of the marriage relationship, which he does all through scripture. I mean, the very first words that were given to Adam and Eve were what? Be fruitful and multiply, right? I mean, the very first command they have regards the physical relationship, the physical intimacy. And so if that's what you have being what God has said, even from the beginning, and then he continues on with that, that it's very much in keeping that this would be his words here too, with the honoring of this relationship. And again, I just personally love that picture of, when I'm doing a wedding ceremony for two people and I present them as husband and wife, God's presenting them as husband and wife also, that God's honoring that relationship, that God is cheering them along, that God is supportive of that. So, all right, I think that's the end of my presentation. Any questions, thoughts, additions, disagreements? Anybody want to share your own personal marriage wisdom with the class? I don't necessarily want wedding night stories because that just gets really uncomfortable for everybody. Go ahead, Barry.
My father always taught me, you treat your wife like the gift that she is. And that's how she will reciprocate. She will treat you as a gift as well. And I try to instill that in my sons. When you find a wife, treat her like a gift from God because she is.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you see that man do that here, and it's interesting to me because he's apparently, at least an established man. I don't know if he's wealthy, but he's an established man. He has some signs of wealth in the book. She thinks she's just a field laborer, sunburned field laborer. Yet he still treats her as if she is a gift, and I would imagine fully feels that way, and so that a beautiful reminder of that. Who else? Nobody, no, go ahead, Donna.
You know, it seems like through this, you kind of see pictures of their friends or, you know, that are watching and seeing this relationship develop. And then that's why it seemed to me that at the end, when it says, mine says, eat, oh friends, drink, yes, drink deeply, oh beloved ones. It's like they've watched this relationship develop through all this process. And they finally come to the point where that they've been waiting for. And it's like the friends are happy for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, who of us hasn't experienced that ourselves? I mean, we've watched two people, you know, date and go through an engagement and finally get married. And, you know, I get to see that very firsthand a lot of times doing wedding ceremonies. And there's just something thrilling about watching a man's face when his wife comes in the back door, or his bride comes in the back door, and seeing that there is a almost palpable sense of relief that you can feel come out of a man when the woman says I do. Like it is so funny to me because you cannot, you know, maybe I imagine it, but it's like, oh, I can't believe this is really happening, you know. And it's just so funny to see. And it's so easy to rejoice with people when they experience that. And you know, if these are friends, that's exactly what they're doing. They're thrilled to see this happen for this woman and for this man. Who else? Nothing. Okay. Y'all was saving it for later whenever I ask questions like, give us your best marriage advice you were ever given, and, you know, those kind of questions we're going to get to in a later class. Okay. So, well, I appreciate y'all trudging through a possibly uncomfortable Bible class period with me. I know these aren't the topics we typically talk about in mixed company or even in not mixed company, but I do appreciate you trudging through it with me. It really is a beautiful story, and we tend to, in our kind of Puritanesque culture, where we've got this standard of, you know, anything regarding that side of a relationship is offhands and secret, and we should never talk about it. But the Bible does talk about it, and the Bible does discuss those things. And so it is appropriate for us to discuss them and talk about them and grow in those relationships. You'd be amazed how many people struggle with that and struggle with that relationship, the physical side of their relationship. That is, I think, it's either number 3 or number 4 listed on the reasons people get divorced, is that they have irreconcilable differences regarding the sexual relationship. Typically, number 1 or 2 is finances. Number 2 or 3 is just personality differences. But generally listed up there is sexual incompatibility. And by that, what that typically means is they're selfish. Meaning, the man or the woman has gotten involved in pornography, or the man, because of pornography, or woman has unrealistic expectations regarding what should be acceptable and comfortable. You can also run into issues where, we had a couple that we were dealing with at a previous congregation where the woman was making videos of herself and posting them online, and he had said he was okay with that. And now all of a sudden he was not okay with it because she was no longer delivering those types of things for him. I mean, it's amazing in our culture how it has warped our understanding of the way this type of relationship should work. And I don't think it is an accident that God in his wisdom put a clear picture of what this relationship looks like when it is done in a godly way, so that we can see how the physical relationship should work. If a man loves and respects and honors and appreciates his wife, she will willingly and openly give herself to him. That's the picture here. And you're going to see as we move on and talking about chapter 5, you're going to have kind of a continuation of this. Some people think this is still the wedding night. I'm just going to kind of say it's just marriage in general. But you've got again, that picture of a man and a woman who are continuing to give themselves to one another because of the respect and honor they feel in the relationship. And I think that it's appropriate for us to see that that's the way this relationship should work. So let me stop that. All right. So any other questions, comments? I see none. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and y'all can unmute yourselves and continue